We do have to get it under control. And I think this is why I hope what's happening in our industry with the strikes going on is it's starting to get people talking about it.
My name is Ali. I'm a cinematographer. I shoot music videos, short films, commercials. I've worked in TV.
My name's Alvarez. I'm a director and writer, and I've made several short films currently in development for my first feature.
My name's Jacob Crawford. I'm the founder and president of Crawford Filmworks. We focus on development of stories for television and feature films.
My name's Melissa, and I'm an editor. I started freelancing when I was 19, and then now I work full-time at a production company called The Heist, and I'm senior editor.
With rapid advancements in AI, the filmmaking industry is on the cusp of major change. How do you perceive the role of AI in revolutionizing the filmmaking industry, and what impact do you believe it will have on the creative process, production efficiencies, and the overall landscape of the film industry? Wow, it's a very loaded question. The intersection of technology and the creative process is nothing new. It's been part of almost all industries for the history of humanity, basically. And I think just with what makes AI special is that it's happening so fast. Like, we usually have time to process these changes. Like with the printing press, with even the internet, it was still at a pace where we were able to think about it, keep up, adapt. With AI, like in the span of 1 year, it's made huge leaps, and everybody's just trying to play catch up.
That's the issue with it, is the exponential growth is faster than we can keep up with.
Exactly.
And it's something that was rolled out without being tested. You look at so many other technologies that go through certain testing phases. AI is one of those things where once it's going, there's really no understanding of how much it's going to learn and how fast it's going to learn. And I think that that's where the industry is really trying to get a grasp on it when there is no laws around it yet. And so it's very hard for, I think, people to begin to figure out, okay, how far is this going to go and what's it really going to do without fully understanding its capabilities. So I think that there's a lot of threat to the industry. I think there's some pros and some great areas within the industry, but I think that that's where we're largely seeing it with the strike, is trying to figure out, okay, how can we prevent it from going too far, and what are its limitations?
With every new technology and every new phase of, I guess, the industry, not just in film, but other ones, there should be some sort of regulations and some sort of guidelines that kind of like prevent it from taking over certain spaces that, I mean, in my opinion, just shouldn't be taken over. And that's more to do with, like, for example, the writer's strike going on right now, and the fact that studios really want to, or just are allowing that AI to write scripts and then, or I guess co-write scripts with other writers, instead of just paying writers their due. But I think it's important to note that, like, the whole point of a film, the whole point of a story is that it's told from, like, I guess, a perspective that has lived a life. And we tell those stories to people who are going to buy tickets and have lived lives. So there should be some sort of point where, or someone who says no, perhaps a certification process where, like, scripts are certified to have not been written by AI. And it's unfortunate that it would come to that fact, but it's one of those things that's like, well, we need to push for it because that's what has led us to make stories now. And just because AI can think of 1,000 more stories and perhaps even better ones, that doesn't mean that we should do it. And that's just coming from a perspective of, like, as a writer, and just knowing that, like, that creative process could be taken away because of a computer. The script is, like, the fundamental thing that brings a story to life. It's the blueprint. And when you involve a computer, it becomes difficult to kind of make it a human story. It's written by AI. It just feels like it's biased, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think what's fascinating too is, like, we look at what feeds AI and where is it getting its information, where is it getting its decision making, and it's largely from previously written literacy content. So I get where the studios are pushing back where they're like, well, we don't want to just say no to ever using AI because if we say no, what if the writers use AI to assist their scripts?
Exactly.
Then we're being taken advantage of.
There's a lot of FOMO happening.
Exactly. And then
like
the writers are like, well, if we let the studios use AI, then we are out of jobs. So it's like this weird in between, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out, I think, across the entire industry.
That question on like ownership and like when you're working alongside AI to kind of write these things, like who actually owns this? Like, where does the data come from? Like, are you really the author then? Is AI the author? Like, there's all these questions, and I feel like the lines get so blurred from there. And like, obviously AI can do all these really crazy but incredible things, like writing scripts and even music, lyrics, poems. It's kind of taking over writers specifically, I feel, at this stage. Like, it's so advanced in that area specifically.
Oh, it's coming for everyone.
It's coming for everyone, but
Actors are
I feel like
the next ones.
Yeah.
'Cause we'll just be
Like
deep
the-
faking.
They're going to be
Deepfake,
selling
yeah.
likeness
True.
and yeah.
I will say one of the, and this is not like being devil's advocate, but I was thinking, I was like, well, this is actually a very helpful thing that AI could do for writers, and it's shortening the research time.
Yeah, big
just
time.
like, you know, for research, especially if you're doing like a period piece or things like that. Like, I need books that completely only talk about this particular subject in this era and this particular time in the world, like part of the world. Like, that is a really cool source to be able to be like, okay, these are the lists. I can just go to the library and find them or just order them on Amazon. Especially with independent filmmakers, it's like, well, we don't have assistants. We don't have research assistants that can just look and scour the libraries for us. I'm the only resource I have for this, you know, project. So that is something that I'm like, that's kind of cool. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
You know,
saves a lot of time.
it saves a lot of time. All right, next question. AI replacing screenwriters, is becoming a prevalent issue with the now ongoing screenwriters strike. According to the New York Times, one approach includes using AI to create a full screenplay, then hiring writers as a fraction of their former pay rates to enhance the content. Can AI-generated scripts ever match the creativity of human writers? Additionally, do you perceive any potential advantages in utilizing AI to assist writers in their work? Well, I think that previously you came up with a really good point that AI comes from work that's already been put out there, and so that muddles with the whole ownership situation, but that also comes from the fact that humans came and put in that work. So it's a little bit difficult to justify a computer taking half the pay or a quarter of any pay whatsoever from someone who's going to be able to like go and enhance the content. I vote no. I vote leave writers alone.
I think in the question where it says, can AI write a script that can compete with a writer's script, I think yes it can, because it's pulling from their previous work. So it's using writers, and I mentioned this earlier, but it's using what writers have done for years, decades, and it can find all those scripts or all those movies and analyze what those characters are saying and build a completely, not unique, but a collage of different projects together to make something engaging. And I think that's what's terrifying, because there's residuals, and in writing there's always been residuals, and if you have something that can pull from anywhere and you don't know where it's pulling from and it's using that to make decisions on the way it's going to write, is terrifying as a writer. And I completely understand where the writers are coming from that standpoint.
Even for us, it's become formulaic in a sense.
Oh yeah.
And AI can start with just like the formulaic stuff, like maybe, and nothing against superhero movies, but they are pretty formulaic. If it even writes a script for that, I think it's very predictable that it can. Maybe not right now, but and again referencing Jeffrey Hinton, because this is like the top guy in AI, and he said that it's becoming better at making logical conclusions. So it's getting better at thinking for itself. Like the thing that he does most with it is he talks in riddles and sees what kind of outcome it does, like how sensible it is, how it can approach solving problems. And as long as it's getting better at that, it can be more original it might not even need to draw from our work. It can just like sort of come up with its own thing.
AI doesn't fully understand like the nuances of human emotion and storytelling just yet. We don't know when that will happen, if that will happen, but right now it's pulling from data, but at the same time we're the ones giving them that data.
I gotta say, I agree. There's definitely formulas to writing a script, whether they're superhero, TV, like 30-minute comedy, or 1-hour dramas or features. There is, but I gotta say, what I guess when we sit down and let's say talk about our favorite auteurs, favorite directors or writers, they have a specific voice, they have a specific way of telling their stories, and AI can copy that, but it won't necessarily make an original voice of their own. I don't see it happening. I'm not also a huge AI person, so I don't really know, but I don't think I want to see it happening either. But the biggest thing about originality that I keep coming back to is that, like, it's weird. It's like we created AI, so I'm not saying we uncreated, but you know, like,
Can we stop it?
yeah, like I think it's just like for me, it's like when it says hiring writers at a fraction of their former pay, I'm like, well, they're already not getting living wages. Like, why are we taking away more from them? Like, at this point, writers aren't even going to be able to go there and edit an AI script. They're going to just be like, well, I have to find another job to sustain my family because the economy is going up. You know, like, it's just, so there's so many other factors that go into it. That's just really difficult to, like, say that AI is okay to come over and take these jobs. But, you know, it's important to note that the human experience has been lived by humans. AI is just learning it, but we've lived it. So prioritizing writers that are human is something that I think all organizations like the Academy Awards, like, you know, like all the unions need to prioritize as well, because unions are there to protect the workers. So,
Sorry.
no, I get it. Unions are there to protect the workers.
At the end of the day is the human lived experience, and AI is pulling from our experiences. So ultimately we should be able to get it under control. But I think we do have to get it under control. And I think this is why I hope what's happening in our industry with the strikes going on is it's starting to get people talking about it. Because I think leading up to the strike, it was like, oh yeah, AI makes cool art and it, you know, can help you write your essay and whatnot. But there's so much more that it can do that I think the writer's strike is bringing to the public and bringing that knowledge forward, where if we can get it under control and if we can regulate it and have the unions, you know, protect the humans that are in their union, then I think it can be a great tool, and a tool that's, you know, used across multiple industries that allows certain people to advance their abilities. Right, I know in the editing there's so much it can do to take away the mundane tasks, which is fantastic, so that the human can spend more time on the creative tasks. So I think that there's a lot of positives with it, but it all comes down to, can we regulate it, and can we do it now before it outsmarts all of us?
It comes to like AI and then having those tools to be able to make your job and life easier, although there are moments where it's like, oh, thank God that that's there. There is that element of like, well, what if it wasn't there? Like it wasn't in 10 years ago. What would you have done? What kind of creative process would have taken you to make the film a little bit different or even better or worse at this point? But there is that element of like, almost like, just because it's there, should you use it? You know? And I do agree that AI, in my opinion, everybody should learn about it. You know, writers should know how to detect it. They should know, you know, like even kids should understand what AI is like and what it should do, it can do, but we also should know the dangers of it and the benefits of it. So we shouldn't go into it blindly and just make speculation, but there should be, like today, a discussion and some sort of like moving forward with like plans to make sure that there are ways to work with it or work against it. But
Yeah, education around it I think is
Yeah.
key. You know, if we can just educate everyone on it, then at least we have a good understanding of what its capabilities are. And I think most people just kind of turn the blind eye right now to like looking at the darkness that can be AI because they just focus on all the positives. But circling back to the writing thing, I really like what you pointed out, Andy, about the research aspect, because I actually hadn't even thought about that when I thought about it in writers and helping them. But it's basically just infinite spark notes that you can just pull on books and articles. So I think, from a documentary side, or, if you're writing stuff inspired by true events or based on true stories, I think it can significantly help you on the research side. I guess the writer argument would be like, well, we have researchers who get paid. So it's kind of like this, it's like, well, where do you draw the line and how do you win?
It's like, I feel like 2 generations from now, our grandchildren, they're going to be like, oh, well, analog is old, but we like non-AI scripts, or, just because, like projectionists, we used to need film projectionists to be able to put the rolls of film in the actual, projection. Yep. But now there's just digital projection in machines, so we don't really need qualified individuals to manage that in just the movie theater experience. But there's a whole generation of us right now that go out of our way to watch movies that are shown in film, and we are appreciating that new medium, or not new old medium, and we're now going out of our way to shoot film when there is also the digital world. So there is some sort of revolutionary thing where we're going to go against it, and there's going to be people that are going to be for it and against it. But I think this is the beginning of the discussion with AI, and I could see it keep going with 2 more generations, 3 more generations to come.
At the end of the day, we just need to find that balance, because there are so many advantages and disadvantages, but it's also making us just lazier and lazier as a society as we're continuing to rely on these sources.
It's scary to know how many, I guess because of the rate it's going, how many jobs it can take over at the same time, especially jobs that people spent their entire lives building that kind of skill. It's going to be hard for those who aren't educated enough in this to know the difference, but it's going to be even harder for those who are and know that those films are generating box office growth.
Like a fever dream.
That looked
See, the way the 2 dudes were drinking from the same
I don't know if I would buy the beer, but it did make me laugh. There was a recent AI-generated ad that required no real actors, cinematographers, and on-screen crews. It relied only on AI software. This development raises significant questions about the future of the film industry. That's a very good point. How do you anticipate these methods impacting the industry? Do you believe such practices are sustainable, or could they potentially lead to job losses or give rise to fairness concerns within the industry?
I guess I just want to know how successful that ad even is, and how it's recepted by the public. Because sure, you can do all these things and replace all these jobs, but we as people are very adaptable, and we're spontaneous. If things happen on set that go wrong, I feel like we have the tools and the knowledge to be able to quickly change route and just go with the flow. And I don't know if AI has the ability to do that yet. I feel like it's still very structured and, again, based on data, but we can kind of just change course if we need to.
I think it's fascinating to see it do that, but I'd also love to know how effective was that commercial. Yeah, it's great. They can put together a commercial, and I've seen the programs that can literally just make a video for you. And I know companies that are utilizing it, but I'd like to know, are those videos effective? Right. Because you look at some of the best commercials, and they're, if it's not the Budweiser puppies, it's usually something that has some humor to it, or is personable or relatable. And can AI do that? And I think is a big question. Right now, I would say no, but will it get there? Probably.
It's scary to know how many, I guess because of the rate it's going, how many jobs it can take over at the same time, especially in the commercial space, because the commercial space, that industry works so fast, and a lot of them do follow a formula. But then there's a bunch of new creatives in the commercial world that are coming out with some really great visuals and some really great way of telling a story through like a 30-second space or a 15-second space. So it's again hard to quantify what is allowable, but then also what sells.
I think that's the key question. What sells? You know, because if we're being more receptive to the AI stuff, then
And if it sells,
we're in a world of hurt. But
That's the downfall.
which is wild. I think, you know, how's it affecting different jobs in the industry? I think at our company, we've actually tried to embrace it in many ways. Copywriting is one of the ones where we usually do a lot of the like brainstorming and copyright work ourselves. And then we use ChatGPT to either consolidate it all or tweak it. It's also a great spell check and grammar check. So sometimes it'll be just like rewrite this for us, but we'll still do a lot of like the heavy lifting to get us there. And then we put it in there to tweak it and then use that on certain pitch decks.
What is the right move forward? Because I feel like it boils down to that question. If people are afraid of being replaced by AI or by someone who's using AI, because that drives like for me, for example, when it first came out, I had two responses. I was like, this is amazing. This is going to save me a lot of time. And at the same time, I was like, I should get on top of this before someone else learns it, and then they have an advantage over me. And so I use it for like visual references. I use it for a lot of things, especially visual research when I'm preparing for a shoot or getting storyboard sort of references. But at the same time, I always find that it's limited in a way that I always fall back to getting references from movies that I know and movies that affected me, because it has that feeling like when you see a shot in a way or a camera motion in a way that it gives you a certain feeling, you cannot really replicate that. It lives with you, that first experience seeing in a film. And again, like, it's what is it gathering all of this source material, and at what point it's gonna start sourcing itself? Because we're using it so much, it's gonna be at some point sourcing stuff that it's made by AI as well. Like, it's just gonna be a loop. So how do we introduce originality again, sort of?
We see it now. 5 years from now, they're gonna look like the ads that we make now. So it's scary that it's come that far and it literally generated human beings. Interesting they chose Shrek as that soundtrack, but I'm gonna have to sleep on that. That's really terrifying.
I think the sound part is what's like the most freaky, because that's what like gets us to engage and laugh with it, as we hear them laughing, right? And the sound, and that's all created by AI. So that's what's like terrifying. And I think right now, there's someone who released a Drake album, but it was made with AI,
Yes.
and now Drake's trying to like sue them or something. But they literally were able to just process, or the AI was able to just go and like somehow process all the Drake music out there and then just make new songs that were Drake's voice. And I know it's like, apparently it's as good as, it could listen to you talk on the phone for 3 seconds and then be able to completely take your voice. And
Oh my god,
It's scary.
that's terrifying. That's terrifying because it really brings into question the legalities of, the ownership of your own likeness.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's also interesting because like when you do sign a contract to be an actor in a project, you do give away the likeness and appearance and all that stuff. But I was gonna say, like, it's important to educate people on AI, because if a kid watched that and they assumed that was real, that's what's scary. Is if they're like, oh, like, is that what I'm supposed to look like? Especially a girl who's like trying to figure out her body image at this point, or a guy who's like, is that what girls like? Or, like, there's just so many things that young kids are going through just in life, and to watch ads that are unrealistic in a lot of ways, it's concerning. So I think education is the number one thing that needs to be prioritized in addition to regulation.
As AI technologies rapidly progress, there's an increasing debate about the potential impact on the future of video editing careers. With the possibility of AI taking over video editing tasks, do you believe AI has the potential to outperform human video editors? And do you foresee any positive aspects of integrating AI into video editing workflows that could enhance efficiency in the editing process? I feel like for now, I see it as a very useful tool just because I think it helps with like the very, I guess, tedious and like boring tasks like sound syncing, logging, and like all of that stuff, assemblies, because there are all these apps that can kind of just like manual or automatic cut, like in DaVinci, and there's this app called Pluralize that I use to sound sync, and I think these things are very helpful in terms of like saving my time, and I can just focus on the story and cutting there where it's important. But at the same time, obviously AI is rapidly advancing. You can change faces, change voices. I feel like it could eventually end up cutting a whole film. Like I said, at the same time, do we really want that? Is it just making me as an editor lazier? Is it making me kind of lose my own skills, like the fundamental skills of editing, by allowing AI to do that? I think at this stage, I'm not sure if AI can really edit a full video front to end where it's the same as how a human can edit. It doesn't understand storytelling in the way that we do. It doesn't have personal experiences. It doesn't have that personal style of editing. It's just all based on what's already provided out there.
I come from editing as well for directing, but the biggest thing that I love when it comes to the editing process with an editor, I'll be there as a director, especially when we're trying to picture lock, like that last push, like there's a lot of, okay, let's try this.
Yeah, a lot of trial
yeah,
and error.
that works, but I'm not sure. Let's get a different opinion on this. Let's send this rough cut out to some friends. Like there is a lot of creative discussion that comes from building an edit, and then that's just to build the edit, and then after that comes the sound and the music and all the color and then all those aspects of it. So like it's such a collaborative process that it's hard to imagine a machine taking over
Exactly.
the four people's, or I guess multiple people's, like kind of
and
input
like
into
part of the enjoyment is that collaborative process. It's talking and kind of trying out different styles before you end on one final piece. And I think it's funny because like before AI is able to really take over video editors, I think the client and whoever is in charge needs to also be able to clearly and effectively tell AI exactly what they want. And people don't know what they want.
Yeah.
Like they think I'm a magician, and they're like, "Yeah, can you cut this?" And I'm like, "What is it that you want?"
Yeah.
So it's kind of a guessing game almost for them, but that's also the fun part about editing, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, what's important too is that you, in the script phase, you're making a story, like you're writing a story. But then when you go into production, elements that are technical, elements of resources, location, things will change slightly. But then when you're in the editing, like there is a very big chance your story is going to change a lot too. You're constantly rewriting a script, and that is not a bad thing. That's something you should embrace. And maybe AI will eventually be self-aware of that, but it's such a collaborative process. You need two brains at least to be able to like go back and forth. Does this work? Does this performance make sense for the way that she's acting towards that person? Like, oh, the prop isn't held right. Like there's just so many elements that like, what can it detect in order to be able to tell a success? Like I can't see AI editing A Few Good Men. Like that's like, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of that kind of storytelling that just comes from the legality of courtroom, but also like the characters being so nuanced and the fast-paced dialogue. Like you can't tell me that AI is going to be able to differentiate between like an auteur like Scorsese or an auteur like Quentin Tarantino, because they're similar in a lot of ways, but very different in a lot of ways. So, there's just so much. I hope that it doesn't replace editors. I
really hope.
because they're just as important as writers. I hope that it doesn't replace, producers and cinematographers, but we have to adapt. We have to not let it get ahead of us.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that you pointed out with editing is, can AI detect the emotion that the director's looking for that was in that take?
Yeah.
And I think that is, and I don't think it can, and I hope that it will never get to that point, because I think that's the beauty in editing and directing and acting, is when you're in the edit room and you're looking at 5, 6, 7 takes of this performance, you have the decision to take the take that gives you the most emotion and the most feeling. And I don't think AI is there yet where it can determine that. And I think that's great for all of our jobs. And I hope it will never get there, because I think that's the beauty and that's the art form. When you're watching a take that, happened on set, and then you get into the editing room, it's going to have so much more emotion to you. The AI is not going to know that. So I think that that's the part of editing that will be very hard to replace, and I hope never gets replaced. But then I see the more mundane tasks, like you spoke to. There's a colleague of mine put me on to this video that Filmmakers did. It was about it's Wonder Studios, I believe, and it's a AI system that can track pretty much any character in any environment and replace it with CG, with a CG character. And it's very good. It's not amazing yet, but it is definitely going to get there. But it's like backed by Spielberg and whatnot. And when Bailey sent it to me, I watched it and I was like, okay, this is insane, because this would take so long to do. It took 4 minutes to like track a handheld camera and then completely replace it with like a robot. And it was just mind blowing. So I think those are areas where that's going to be really exciting to explore the possibilities that you can now do in a much faster time period. But at the end of the day, it's all about the emotion that you can convey. And I don't think AI will get to the point where it can make the decisions on what takes the best take.
Yeah. Human flow is like you were saying, like, especially in editing. I feel like editing is probably the hardest to have that, because there's certain flow, creative flow that happens that is very innate to our human experience, that I don't think anytime soon AI will be able to do that. And I wanted to point out something earlier that you also mentioned, Andy, was that now we're back to using film more. Also, 2D animation never went anywhere. It's very much alive and very strong. And I think that raises the question is, why should we use AI? And if we're using it because the story or the production needs it, then that warrants using it. But if we're just using it to cut costs and to speed up the process, then that's when it's going to be hurtful to the industry, I guess. And it's like, because you have films that are made in 2D and they're done in 2D because why they asked the question before they made it, and it was like, why should we do it in 3D or why should we do it in 2D? And the story, the art style, and the creative process informed their decision. And I think moving forward, AI is going to be sort of that same tool. Like, why should we use it? Why do I need it in this particular project?
Mm-hmm. I agree. I also was just thinking in my head, I'm like, would a film like Whiplash would be edited by AI? Like
Dragging
films that depend on or the editing of music, when music is such an integral part of that film, like it's hard to identify a style and like approach to the creativity of a film, like when AI is taking control of that. Like you watch Whiplash and you're like, that's amazing, but you were not going to get that from a computer, because like it's an instinct that that director had to be like, no, I want it cut here, and then we're gonna put this shot in that's just gonna give us this emotion, boom, boom. And like you see that constantly, because he's grown from that to Babylon. Like there's so much that person, that creative has gone through in his experience as a storyteller, that he's been able to tell a different story each time in a different way. AI like, how do we know they're not going to, because they've used formulas, like, how do we know they're not going to be able to be more original? Considering the insightful discussion on the impact of AI technologies in film, what is your overall stance on the integration of AI in the film industry? Have your opinions changed after the discussion? I don't think my opinions have changed. I think my opinions have been broadened because I didn't realize how much AI had impacted the editing space. And then I can understand how AI can be useful in cutting costs from a producer's perspective. But I think at the core of it, I came into this discussion thinking, AI is not a good thing, but it's not a bad thing. But we need to learn we need to figure out a way to regulate it. And I still have that stance. But after the discussion, I am eager to know other positions in this industry, from PA to lamp op to, development execs to I want to know how that would impact their jobs. And I want to know how that overall, is going to be impacting the industry. So it's good to have these discussions.
Yeah, to follow that up, has my opinion changed after the discussion, or has it? Yeah, I don't think my opinion's necessarily changed, but like Andy said, it's definitely been broadened into other aspects of our industry that, I was less aware of. I think that, again, speaking to the regulation aspect, if we can get ahead of this or at least catch up to it, I think then we'll have a great opportunity to use it for its best purposes and avoid some of the less strong things it's bringing to our industry that could be very hurtful to a lot of people. So I think that, after hearing all your guys' feedback and perception on it, it's fascinating to continue to look as a producer who works with all of you. How can we continue to work with all of you, but how can we use this to continue to put amazing films on screen? And is there a way that we can find a great collaboration between what it's able to provide us and what us as creatives can bring to it?
Yeah, just going off all of that, again, I don't think my opinion has changed either. I think AI is very useful, but at the same time, I think that we as filmmakers, we have the emotion, we have the story, we have the heart, and that's ultimately what goes into the success of a film. It's that passion, it's that community, it's the drive that we all have to make these films. And again, I hope that maybe they'll start including some of these things in education, just for upcoming filmmakers as well, just to be aware. I think it's important that we all are aware and we're all keeping up to date with what's happening, but I don't think it should stop us from making films together.
While my opinion hasn't changed as well, but my outlook has. I'm more optimistic, I'm more positive about it. I feel like this discussion, and I think the discussion should be alive and happening everywhere. Like the way AI works, it's just like trillions of neural networks and a huge infinite amount of knowledge. And if we as humans pull our resources the same way, and talk about it everywhere. I'm talking like even not within the film industry, everywhere, because it is going to impact us, not essentially in the technical terms as well. It's going to impact everything. And as long as we keep the discussion alive, we're going to ultimately find a solution.